Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything with Digital Alchemy. Yay! And I am your host, the aforementioned Dave Rush, making you the proud ADRAMADA Armada. Tonight is the occasional unusual show. It is not Thursday as we record this. Apologies if you look for me on Thursday. Uh, there's things going on, some very sad things and things that get pushed as a result. I apologize for that. Today's topic for me is so interesting that I didn't want to push it back till next Thursday. Excuse me. So, we'll go for one day. I know there's not a lot of live people here as a result. People should be out and about on Friday nights as we recover from the grand polar vortex, wicked freeze, snowstorm all over the country. And so now it's all time to bust out again, but I'm here. And so I won't make the best of it. Who else is here? There's almost nobody here. I think we got two people. Hello, Patricia. Hello, Tullowit. Friday show, yes, brings back memory. We used to do Pie Day Fridays a few years back when the show was all Raspberry Pi, and went by a different name. It wasn't Pie Day Friday. It was another thing, but it was cool. And we still do a lot of pie stuff. We're even going to do a little pie stuff tonight. Oh, let's see. Tullowit, you're just a little bit early, like about 6.5 hours. Very nice. And then Patricia Grace about a half an hour before showtime. Sorry, Patricia. Tullowit just before then. Anyways, we're all here. Jason Helms in the house. Hello, buddy. Well, thanks for at least all the usuals. We'll probably get some more people in before we are ready for them, and that's fine. And of course, if you're not watching this live, this is available on archive all the time. So, this show, A Drama, is dedicated to collecting and disseminating information on technology and its uses. And in particular, we're interested in how advancement of technology impacts our daily and our long-term lives. We range through all kinds of topics, and today is, if you're not watching this live, Friday, January 24th. It's January 24th! 7 days from now, it's going to be January 31st. And the next day we'll be done with January. 1/12 of the way almost through the year. So let's dive right into it, because today's topic is long and involved, and if I don't finish it, I'm not going to finish it. I like it, I love it, I would like to do that, but I hate doing multiple twofers in a row. And we did part one and part two the last 2 weeks on servers. So, in today's date, there are a few noteworthy things that I thought worthy of mention. On this date in 1848, James Marshall finds gold in Sutter's Mill, Coloma, California, beginning the California Gold Rush. Something a little nearer and dearer and closer to my heart. Myself and some other old compatriots shot the breeze about this one today. On this date in 1908, Lieutenant General Robert Baden Powell publishes his manual, Scouting for Boys. Boys wanted to be soldiers. Baden didn't see anything wrong with that, but he didn't want to see boys as soldiers. He wanted to see boys grow up to be independent men. And if they wanted to serve their country and service, fine. And if not, just so long as they were independent and resourceful and skillful. And so he created this book, Scouting for Boys, as a manual of self-instruction in outdoor skills and self-improvement. The book became the inspiration for what was then called the Scout movement, which later turned into the Boy Scouts of America and Boy Scouts all over the world. 1935, in Virginia, the American Can Company partners up with Kruger Brewing Company to create Kruger's Cream Ale, the first canned beer. 1935 on this date. You know, it took almost 30 years later, 28 years later, the pull top was invented for cans. They were opening it with church key can openers. And How about near and dear to all of our hearts, those of us who want to watch shows like this? On this date, 1984, Apple Computer Corporation Incorporated unveils its revolutionary Macintosh personal computer in a Super Bowl TV ad directed by Ridley Scott, amazingly. So cool, huh? Hey, keep up or I probably should have done this. If you're watching this not live, if you're watching this live, I am putting contact information. If for some strange reason you want to contact me or see some of the other things that we do, here's some ways to do that. I got email addresses in here, and I got platforms that I'm active on. And hey, if you are not a participating member of the Discord server, it is an ever-growing tech discovery and discussion server. Come on in, join us. There's an invitation link in the chat feed right here, right now. Last week's show topic was part 2 of rack servers. What makes rack servers different than desktop PCs? Fun, neat episode. I really enjoyed those. And we're kind of extending on that today, but what we're talking about today is KVMs, keyboard, video, mouse, which is very applicable in the server arena and in desktop arenas and all kinds of other places. So that's going to be kind of fun. It's interesting for me. All right, what are you guys talking about? Yes, we're live. I only get my KVMs from Kentucky. You know, I see Tulowitz's name on there, and I just don't have the brain switch fast enough not to read out loud before I've read what he says. M6 husband loved his Yukon Cornelius shirt. Outstanding. I know I get this up high enough, and I know that this doesn't focus very well. IT, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Which is actually on television right now. Oh, goodness gracious. Speaking of Super Bowl, Tubi is going to air it. Wow. I, on the other hand, will watch it on broadcast. So what are we, 3 weeks from the Super Bowl? We got the conference championships this weekend. Excuse me. And then 2 weeks off, and Uber Bowl, the college championship ended correctly. You know, if you're originally an Ohioan, go Bucks. Oh, every time I think of pull tops, I remember the episode of Emergency where the dude dropped his pop top into the can and drank it choking. I don't remember that specific episode. I think I would have a very hard time remembering any specific episodes. I'll be thinking about that now. Back in my head while we do all this. Pull top, pop top. I'm with you. Pop top should be on Pop Tarts. Jason, I learned more about router switches and app in the last month than I ever thought I would. I have 2 Network Plus classes going on right now, and this week, second session of both of those classes this week, we introduced switches and how they basically function and some of the difference between managed and unmanaged switches, and now we're into binary, IP, and subnet masking, subnetting. That's one of my favorite topics in all of networking. Patricia, thinking of putting the YouTube TV on pause. Rate increase. Yeah, Netflix, I guess, has a rate increase, but apparently it's minimal, like $1 a month or something. You can teach me then. Yeah, absolutely. Access points and wireless access points. All right, let us continue then. News. I am back on track, by the way. I have everything done and prepped for this show that I kind of let slide on previous shows. One possible exception. We got the sign up. We got the shirt up. I got slides for our presentations today and news. Hey, speaking of that, we're about to do news, so it's time to switch into slides. Yeah, I remember how to. I remember how to move from here to there. What do you do? We did control home. Slide that. Okay, like that. So, all right, so news of the week. We start with physics. Inside the Earth is a big glob of molten nickel and molten iron. In fact, there's two very distinct globs within there, and they kind of wobble around over time. And as they wobble, the magnetic North Pole changes. And you can look at this handy dandy little map that I've got up here showing where it's been from 1620 through 2020. And every 5 years, a couple of geographic and weather folks get together and they say, hey, what's going on? And of course, they track it all through the year, but every 5 years, they get together and say, has it moved enough that we need to do anything about it? Not like we can fix the wobbling globs in the center of the Earth, but magnetic north changes impacts a lot of things. It impacts GPSs, it impacts compasses, it impacts my old profession as a pilot. If you didn't know this already, when they tell you that you're landing on runway 27, add a 0 to that, and that is plus or minus 5 degrees the direction that the runway lies when you're landing on it. So you're landing to 270 degrees or roughly west. A few years ago, about 10 years ago, there was enough of a change that here at Houston Intercontinental Airport, we had 2-6 left, center, and right. And they all weren't perfectly parallel, one was a little bit. And because of the shift, the 2-6s stayed okay, but two of them, but one of them became a 2-7, moved past 265 degrees and went to some other number. So they are calling this year an emergency year, which is really kind of weird because for the last 15 years, you can see the motion has been heading out of northern Canada up over the Arctic Ocean and aiming toward Siberia. And it's been moving fast, on the order of 20 to 30 miles a year. So 5 years, that's 150 miles or so. And then in the last 5 years, a sudden deceleration happened. And it has impact, long and short of it, and because of projections that are made and planning and things like that, they're issuing an emergency status for anybody who is involved with global magnetism to adjust accordingly. And they're generating new tables and things like that. So, interesting stuff. I like this one because I remember this. What are you guys chatting about here? Everything. Well, yeah, the center of the Earth does have dinosaurs. The center of the moon has Hitler riding dinosaurs. The first movie that was so good. All right, I'll let you guys have that conversation to your own. Back in the early 80s, why did that just go, oh, goodness, are you going to do this to me? Stop. Sorry, slideshow parameters must adjust, fade, loop, hide, slide. Okay, manual. That's all right. Yeah. Then what happened? Guys, I have lost my slideshow. Oh, okay. There we go. So back in the 60s and 70s, a guy named, heck was his name? Joseph Weizenbaum, MIT professor, back in the 60s, he created what is credited to be the first chatbot. He wrote a program, and you could type in conversations to it. I don't know what his goal was, if he was trying to create a system that would meet with the Turing test or something like that. But it was really cool. I recall playing with it on Radio Shack computers back in the day. It was called Eliza. Well, he passed a long time ago, and so did the program and everything, and it's gone. Except a few years back, an archivist at MIT found printouts of much of his code. And so it's taken a few years, this was just 3 years ago, 4 years ago that they found this. So they had to create an environment that this could run in, and the printouts weren't complete. It made calls to programs that were not documented in here. So some of the developers and geniuses over at MIT wrote some supporting files, but Eliza is back. It was written in Lisp. Wound up on ARPANET. Became part of Friend for tech-savvy users. All right, so that's a lie. That's kind of cool. I'm always skeptical about this kind of stuff. New battery technology that's going to blow away all the existing battery technology. This one uses lithium sulfur lithium sulfide or sulfate, I don't know what it is. Li2S. It's a single S. So it's either just sulfur or sulfide. But usually sulfides have a 2 afterward. Anyway, the big deal with this one is not its energy production capacity, but its recharge cycles. They are claiming 80% charge capacity after 25,000 charge cycles. So if that's legit, cool bananas. The Hubble tension has been controversial since Hubble came up with this in 1929. The Hubble tension is a calculation on how fast the universe is expanding. His calculations have always been controversial. Some people stand by them like they are the gold standard. Some people argue with them. So what do you do when you have competing theories? You devise experiments and come up with real results. Well, they did a measurement a few years back and said, this isn't working. The universe seems to be expanding faster than the Hubble tension called for. But that experiment was controversial. Your results can't be right the way you're measuring ours. So they just completed another round and published their results, and the results matched the last attempt. Does this have any bearing on what you and I do every day? Probably not. But if you're a space enthusiast, a cosmologist, amateur, then this is fascinating. All right, let's move into the realm of IT. VirtualBox 7.1.6 was released in the last week. It supports the latest Linux kernel. Cool. Adds support for the previous kernel. The newest latest is 6.13. The previous one, 6.12. It improved support for Red Hat. So if you want to play around with Red Hat in a VirtualBox, awesome. It'll work with Red Hat 9.6, which is current. Let's see, anything special above and beyond that. GUI improvements. Lots of other interesting Linux changes. It's been 3 months since they've had a third point release. So they've been working hard on this thing. Better support for extensions and guest editions. So I haven't updated my VirtualBox in my Linux daily driver in a while. When I read about this today, I find interesting enough that in the coming week I will swap it out. Probably more interesting on a practical value for people who want to transition to the Linux world but still need Windows. You can dual boot, you can do one or the other in a VM, but if we can get them even closer together with something like wine. Wine is not an emulator. It's an acronym with its own definition in the acronym. Anyways, they came out with Wine 10.0 this week. Cool, newer, better, stronger, faster, runs Windows programs better. And the two biggies are, it's got a Bluetooth driver. That's freaking awesome. So if you want to do Windows functions that use Bluetooth in the Wine environment on a Linux system, it's there. It's experimental, but it's there. New HID pointer drivers, okay, getting your mouse and your Wacom pens and things like that to work reliably under Wine is always problematic. It's never great, but it's never imperfect, or it's never perfect, but it's never imperfect. You know what I mean. So that's kind of cool. And last on the news items, I think, if you look at this page and you had any experience working with some network tools, you'll say, that looks an awful lot like Wireshark. And you'd be right, because it's Wireshark. But what they've done is they've partnered up with, who is this? Falco. Falco is a cloud site, cloud native monitoring security tool. Runs across multiple hosts, containers, Kubernetes, cloud environments. Well, they and the Wireshark people got together, and now we can use what is essentially the core code of Wireshark with Falco's elements and monitor cloud processes in a very similar fashion as we monitor network processes with Wireshark. The new product is called StratoShark, right? Strato clouds and shark, like shark. And so if you look at this thing, you don't see things like UDP and TCP and SSH and all that stuff. We're monitoring cloud processes, like when somebody calls for a curl or a get or a post or all kinds of other cloud functions. So I think that's pretty darn cool. All right, that's going to take us where we need to go next. Moving down my notes page. Oh, that's very good. Let's see what you guys are up to. I have two things today. One, we're going to do this KVM topic, and I also have a speedy little fun Linux project that I want to show you. Super easy. All right, reading messages. Managed equipment, totally different ball games than unmanaged. Boy, isn't it, huh? Hey, in the new Network Plus, there are some stock command line switch and router functions like show command, show config, show current config, show active config, a couple other goodies like that. Gojira. I looked at my framing today and said, Gojira? Enterprise. That's a nice juxtaposition. All right, well, let's dive into this first little mini project. Just because I haven't done anything like this in a while. Excuse me. We go over here, we set Putty in the window, and we share it. Then we put Dave in the window. We're coming back. All right, there is a set of utilities out there called LM Sensors. It's a package that you have to install, and we have talked about most of these individual sensors over the years, since the days of Pi Day Friday and Drama through ADRAMADA. So if I want to see what's going on with my CPU, percentage of usage, I've showed you 3 or 4 different ways to do that. Never talked much about GPU. Wi-Fi activity, if you've got an SSD, NVMe activity, hard drive temperatures, things like that. We can do all those things individually, but there's this package called LM-Sensors. that you can install and watch all of those things at once. So to install it, if you got a Debian-based system like Ubuntu or Mint or something like that, sudo apt or apt-get. This was somebody's idea. I like apt much better in most cases. So you do sudo apt or apt-get, install LM sensors. Give it a password here. Password 123. 12345. That's amazing. That's the same password as my luggage. All right, it's done. Now all you have to do to take advantage of it, let's do a clear on here, and we'll say watch. That's a new command that came with, and we'll use a set of strings here that watches everything. -d, -n, 1 sensors. And boom, there it all is. So I can look at my total core temp. I can see my ISA adapter, not much going on there. All the temperatures of all the cores in this machine. It's a 6-core system. You get the idea. It's kind of cool. So all we did, sudo apt install lm-sensors, and then watch -d, -n, 1 sensors. Tell you what, I feel like such a nice guy. How about I put both of those commands in the chat. There's sudo apt install. There's apt-get. You can use apt-get if you want. And here is the command after you've installed it. And boom. Copy and paste those. Have fun. And then back to Dave. I think I'm done with that for today. Exit. No, I might want to end up using that again. All right, last look and see what you guys got going on. People are turning up. Holy Hannah. Holy banana. Let's do that. Joey Quitzel's here. Wow, Joey. Great to see you. I saw you active on one of the platforms we all play in the last day. Don't remember what it was. Might have been an old message, but I said, hey, there's Joey. Wonder how he's been doing. Got a bug. But hey, I got him. Now I have a streak on my monitor, but I no longer have a bug. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about KVMs. And I'm doing this with slides, but mostly extemporaneously, except for one place that I made some notes that I said, got to make sure we talk about this. So let's go into slideshow. And here's the trick. If you've got a desktop PC, and in particular a desktop PC, you will never have a need for a KVM, at least not the kind we're looking at right now. The job of a KVM says, I have 2 computers, and they occupy a similar amount of real estate, but I only have enough room for 1 monitor and 1 keyboard, and I'm only active on one of those computers at any given time. The other one may be running programs, maybe it's a web server, maybe it's pulling down information, maybe it's a file server, maybe it's just, it's a Mac. Sometimes I play with Mac, sometimes I play with PC. But I only have room for 1 monitor or even 2 monitors, but I want dual monitors on both of them. Only room for 1 keyboard, only room for 1 mouse. Enter the KVM switch. KVM, keyboard, video, monitor. It says, in this little box here in the middle, there will be a monitor port, VGA, HDMI, whatever. And you can see this is kind of old. This has PS2 mouse and keyboard connectors. The mouse is green, the keyboard is purple. And so what I do is take this right-hand side one and I plug in the mouse and keyboard to mouse and keyboard ports. In 2025, we would use a USB connector there. Plug the video connector into the video port. and do that on computer 1. Do the same thing with the left-hand side on computer 2, and then plug in the actual monitor and the actual keyboards and or mice, keyboard and or mouse, into this box in the middle. It's got some ports that we can't see. And now you can see on top of this thing, there's two little buttons, little round circles, and I click the one on the left, and now that connects the monitor and the keyboard and the mouse to the computer on the left, the PC in my example. And okay, I'm doing my thing there. I browse a little bit with it. I run a program. Now I want to go work with the Mac. So I click the little right-hand button, and now my monitor and keyboard and mouse are attached to that. Meantime, there is a fake monitor and keyboard and mouse inside the little central box. So the computer over there thinks that it's connected to monitor, keyboard, and mouse, and so he doesn't throw any errors. That's the really cool magic of a KVM. So back in the day when we started experimenting with KVMs on the home front, 2 ports was kind of the standard. Any piece of tech that has a cable looking that cool. Yeah, you can see there's also audio cables in there. It's something you gotta have. You know, you can find these at flea markets and handfests and things like that. Going back this old for $1. I've got one upstairs. I couldn't find it. It's in my museum box. I could have found it. I didn't want to go digging for it. How's that? Next slide, Frederick. Well, if we want to get a little more sophisticated, we can do a box like this. We're showing the front and backs of the same box. Excuse me. Does the same thing. The only difference here is you add your own cables. And what you can kind of sort of see on the lower one is the video ports that go to the computers. So there's HDMI ports, there's display ports, there's DVI ports if you want to go dig into history, and you can always use any kind of adapter that makes you happy. I have, I'm going to switch to Dave's space here in a second. Let's do that now. Bump, bump, bump. So I could use what I'm pulling out here on either side of the world, but there's an HDMI port connector, and then here in the box, that's a VGA connector, which we talked about when we talked servers. That's what you're going to find even on most modern servers. So it doesn't matter really what kind of video ports you get on your KVM if you're willing to use adapters. I prefer not, but I'm going to show you somewhere I've got to do that. So that's cool. Back to the slideshow. And we will be coming back to me periodically because I have more showing up for you. So these ones have USB ports. They call them in ports and out ports. And the cool thing about KVMs with USBs is you can use a USB for a mouse and one for a keyboard. I do that. I use one USB with a wireless dongle for mouse and keyboard. And then I need a connection that goes from one of the in USBs to one computer and one of the ins to another computer. Cool, USB, USB. And then there's always another leftover USB port for another shareable device, like a camera. Usually these things require some power. So we have a little power system over here. There's power input with a USB-C, it looks like. Or here's a 12-volt wall wart type of power. And our switch, so this would be the front of the box, is push in, push out, whatever the case may be. I've got, well, I'll show you a picture of something somewhere coming up. And this one also has a shareable capability of a mouse, of a mic and speakers. And we don't have to have mic and speaker connections over here because it's going to use the USB hub internally and pass that all through USB. So that's really kind of slick. More ports. This is very similar to the one that I'm actually using as we speak. Got 4 computers it can connect to and supports dual monitors on each of the computers. So this is where I hook in my actual physical monitors. And you can see these are display ports and HDMI. They come in all flavors. And again, you can use adapters, whatever you like. This one's unusual. It's got an on-off switch. Oftentimes, they will also have a dedicated speaker mic out. So it comes through maybe the HDMI ports, maybe whatever. There's a breakout in here, and you can plug in your external speakers to this. That's the way my box is set. And this is kind of cool. The switches and buttons are actually a little bit different for every kind of model. When you push the button on this one LED will turn on. When you push it on mine, I have 2 LEDs that are beside it. One tells me if the computer is powered, and the other tells me that I've selected that computer. So it's a neat thing. Now let's move to the rack room, the server room. What we have in a server room is a rack, sometimes 42 units. The one that I'm associated with here, TRG, they just took delivery on a bunch of 48, 6 more spaces, racks. So we're going to rack something up. We're going to take that top rack and put in a router and maybe some other things on top. Somewhere there we're going to get 35, 38, maybe up to 40 rack mount servers in there. Rack them all in, connect them all to power, connect them all to the switch, and that's it. They're functional. We've already set up and installed the operating system in the building room. And what we'll do with these things is we will tell the customer, here's your IP address. And if they have a domain, we can register that with our domain system, or we can use a commercial one or wherever they got their domain from, however we want to work that out. But now they just access their operating system. Oh no, something went wrong. The operating system crashed. They can't get to it to reset the server because it's just a crashed OS. So some human has to go in and hook up a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse if it's a Windows-based system, and plug those in and reboot it and maybe go to BIOS and fix it, or do whatever fixing needs to be done. And for that we use a beast called a crash cart. 1 or 2 monitors, 1 or 2 keyboards, maybe 1, maybe a mouse, and we drag these things all over the place. We can also use, even if the OS is crashed, something we talked about in last week's show and the previous week, IPMI. That's hooked up to another network connection, and it's got a unique IP address. We may be able to get there and not need a crash cart. But sometimes if you're sitting there in the data center and you get a ticket that says system's crashed, a lot easier just to walk over to the racks, plug in a monitor and keyboard from a crash cart, commit surgery, and up and running again. So another way to get to and manage servers is with IPMI, iDRAC, LOC, whatever. But this is where I wanted to take our whole world to. This is another kind of crash cart. This one's from StarTech. It's a very popular model. New, $500 to $600. And what you do with this little guy, he's really kind of cool, is you install a piece of software that comes with this thing on usually a laptop. And then you can plug this into your laptop via USB. And then you carry your laptop over to the server. This will work on a computer too. Plug this into the server's video port, plug this into the keyboard or mouse port, and your laptop is now no longer a laptop. It's a dumb terminal. All it has is a mouse and a keyboard and a monitor. No, it's a little smarter than that. You can put files on there that can be transferred up and down to the server. But these are just the most awesome, handy-dandy things to use. You don't have to haul around that pole. The problem with the pole is the feet frequently, especially in RNOC, barely fit between rows of racks or the back of a rack and a cage wall or something like that. We're lifting things and moving them past doors, and what a pain. But if I can just take my handy-dandy little laptop, plug these two ports in, come here, you, transition. Okay, so here's the two little ports that go into the computer, like the server. Here's a port that goes into my laptop. Here's the box that does all the magic, and I keep my little software program on a flash drive strapped to it. There's a couple flash drives here because I got a couple different tasks that I can do with this. One of them holds operating systems, and the other one holds the software to make my computer or laptop do what it needs to do. So that's some very neat stuff. As I'm going to transition, I'm going to do this. The watchword these days is not crash carts. It's doing a KVM over the internet, over a network connection. Yeah, great shape on time. And they make commercial boxes that can do that. They also make add-on devices for popular single-board computers, such as a Raspberry Pi. This one's done on, it looks like a Raspberry Pi 4. I see two little video connectors down low. Plus, we've got another connector over here on the left side with a bridge in there. I'll show you that. So this thing is going to do something very similar to what we did. You can see he's got his own network connection. And what I'm going to do with this thing is I'm going to mount this. I'm going to set this on a shelf in a rack. I'm going to set this right next to my computer. I can do this remotely from my laptop, wherever I want. Hook in a video connector to my monitor slot. Same thing for USB to a keyboard. And then wherever I am, I can connect to this component of it through the RJ45 on the upper right. I can call this thing up and take over the screen and keyboard and mouse remotely from another computer. This is called KVM over IP. And they make all kinds of different versions of this thing. This one is a do-it-yourself kit. To do it yourself will cost you a Raspberry Pi. You can do this with a Zero. They make smaller boards than this. I haven't pulled it out yet. I didn't start building this one yet. There's two boards to pull this off and an optional third. There's a board here in my handy-dandy little hand that's about $10. And a second board in the package, again, I have it open. It's a project that's sitting in my thing. This one costs $32. $42, and then you need one very creative USB cable. It's got a splitter with data on one side and power on the other side, and gets both on the third side, a little wide connector. And those things run about $6. Pick them up from Pi Shop. SHOPPE, I believe. No, I think they changed their name now. Now it's Pi-Shop or even PiShop.com. And you add those guys to your system. You download an image from a site, and you put that image in, and you can configure it, and you're ready to do that. You would need one of those if you're going to talk about, well, anything. You're going to do it with two computers at home. You need one for each computer at home. If you were going to do that with a bunch of rack mount servers, and I wouldn't, because modern rack mount servers all have IPMI type interfaces. But if you went into old systems, if you didn't have enough IP addresses to pull that off or all the pieces that you need, you could do that for each computer. So that's a really cool thing. I said that a lot today, sorry. All right, so this is a Pi KVM. There are companies that do DIYs on these. There are companies that create the software and tell you the stuff to buy. And there are companies who make fully assembled versions of these guys. Pi KVM, they're on their 4th model right now. The image here is a little stretched. It doesn't look quite like that. But basically that's the same thing that was in the previous slide with an enclosure and with, you can see on the right-hand side of these things, a little LCD panel. So you can look at the status, you can look at IP addresses, you can look at whether or not it's connected, and some other interesting things about it. These things, with the enclosure and everything, not horribly expensive compared to a StarTech laptop crash cart, but not horribly cheap either. Somewhere in the $250 to $300. So if we go back to that previous one, you can build this guy yourself. Total cost, I would do a 2 gig Pi 4. Those are $45. And these two boards, 32, 42, 50, about $100 to build this whole thing. It doesn't have the LCD, it doesn't have the enclosure, a little more money for that. But hey, freaking cool. Now there's 2 other companies that make IP over KVMs. I love these guys. I used to not. I always look at them historically as a fly-by-night, make cheap crap and get out of it. They've really come into themselves. They make a lot of new products every month. They got a new product coming out. They support their products very well. This is called a Nano KVM. And I think this is version 3 of it. And I'll show you something amazing about this thing. 2 amazing things. One, I got one. This, I think it cost me $69 plus a couple of bucks shipping. Nice big LCD screen. Nice little bit of controllables here. It's got lots of memory in it. All you got to do is add the cabling to your computer. This would go in the wherever the computer is that you want to remote control, and you give it a network connection. There we go. And then I can call it again. You put some software on a remote computer. It's a laptop, it's a desktop, doesn't matter. And you call this thing, and your screen and keyboard become the screen and keyboard of the remote computer that you're working with. Cool bananas. Again, it's got memory, it's got storage in here, so I can put images in here and do a remote install from an image that I saved to here. The image isn't here, that's okay. I can remotely save it up here and then use the remote process. That's freaking cool. This is another piece that comes with it, optionally. We plug it into some circuitry on the Pi, and then we use a couple of jumpers in the back here and interrupt the reset wire that goes to the power supply connector on the computer. And then I can use that KVM control feature to do a power reset, a power reboot. So even if I can't get to the computer, I can't get to it through the KVM, the operating system that's running on there either doesn't exist, it hasn't been installed yet, it's crashed, whatever, I can reboot that computer remotely with something like a $70 Nano KVM. And one more thing down there. Yeah. This guy. So this is that Pi KVM. This is a version 3. You saw the version 4. So it's got the additional add-on KVM hat. It's got an enclosure. It's got the LCD screen. Does most of everything that the V4 does. And then by the time you get it all configured, that's all the wiring that you got to add to it. Some of these go to the computer. Some of these go, here's one. We got to power the thing, right? And that V3, much less expensive than the current V4 model. That's almost going to wind us up. Just got one or two more things to show you. 2 slides left. So this is some of what I just showed you. This is the ATX power extension alongside all of the other ports. So if we look at this 1, 2, 7, and 8, 1 and 7, look at that. I can look at power and hard drive LEDs. I can run the reset switch or the power switch. Just takes a little bit of jumper cables, and we are in Biznuski. If you want to control a whole rack of servers, 42 servers, they make boxes that will do that. This one's only good for 16. This particular box retail just under 700 bucks. Comes with all the cables, so you throw it on a shelf in your rack at the top of it, in the middle of the bottom of it, and off you go. So you need 4 or so of these. What is it? 32. You need 3 of these to do a 42 system, but they make 32s and they make 42s. And again, this guy's 700 bucks. You're gonna open up your wallet with 2,000 bucks for a single box and all the cabling and everything to control 42 servers. But that's KVMs in a nutshell. And this is me in a nutshell. Help, I'm trapped in. I'm sorry. I went Mike Myers, not our personal friend, the other one, for just a couple of moments. Other uses for these things. I need to get into a remote computer's BIOS. This is perfect for that. Okay, I reboot it. I'm now the screen and keyboard. I spam F5 or F12 or F2 or whatever it is. Now I'm in BIOS. I take care of the new settings. I save them. I tell it to reboot. He reboots. The operating system boots up. I can watch it. Powerful. So I can reboot a system with a crashed OS if I'm local. But if I'm local, IP-based KVMs are just the tool. These little cheapo KVMs, 80 bucks, whatever they are, the do-it-yourself, a couple extra bucks, you can purchase the ATX editions, or if you buy the top-of-the-line model, it'll already have the ATX power features built in it. And that finishes us on time. 2 projects, 1 show. What a marvelous rarity, kids. So let's see what you guys were chatting about whilst we were doing this. Yeah, cables. Reading messages. Yeah, all kinds of different connections. That's really awesome. Right, so yeah, we always think of HDMI because that's what we work with day to day on your television, on your regular desktop computer, on your laptop. But even then, with HDMI, there's 3 different sizes of HDMI. But again, if you're going to mess with servers, more often than not, 99% of the time, you're going to encounter VGA. And that being native is HDMI, so we get the handy-dandy little adapter, and we're in business. And I've tested that on a couple of different systems running HDMI. It's amazing. It's great. It's fantastic. Didn't think about the different connections. Does that 4-piece model have the wired button to click and swap displays? Yes. Yes, it does. But the intention isn't to do that. The intention is to have 2 displays when you're connected to a computer with 2 displays. But then you can do some pretty heavy magic, right? If you have no displays, but you've got 2 ports on the server, on the computer, you could use 2 monitors connected here and do mirroring or extending or anything like that. And I think the way I would answer the question that you've asked there is that 4-piece have wired button to click and swap displays. I don't know if the KVM box itself will switch left and right. You would have to do that with a left-right switch utility in the OS. You're sold, Joey. Way to go. Yeah, me neither. I started playing with this arena, and Crash Cart. It's obvious what it does now that I've seen it. And then one of the people here or on Discord said we use that laptop StarTech one. Somebody belittled the fact that I was talking at some point about a Crash Cart. So I gotta refresh this page anyway. So he said we use these things, and so I went out on the hunt for it. Other people know the story. Forgive me for retelling it and boring you about it, but that StarTech Crash Cart thing is expensive, $500 give or take. So I put a daily search on eBay, and one came up for $50, $55, something like that, and it said, but it's broken. It's parts only. And I read his description, and I looked at his pictures, and the only thing that was broken is the two halves of the chassis had become unsnapped, and he was holding it together with a piece of gaff tape. And so I wrote him, I said, well, does it function? He says, yeah, it absolutely functions. It's just fine. Everybody else panicked because they didn't contact with him and didn't bid it. I threw in the $55 bid, and next thing it was at my house. I raced over to the data center and plugged it into my laptop, threw the software on, went into the rack room, plugged it in, and it came right up. Magic and mystery. Holy shnikes. Yeah, there's so much more to KVM than I even realized. I've been teaching KVMs conceptually for decades in A+ classes. We never touch them in Net Plus, certainly not in Security Plus. They belong there, especially these internet IP-based KVMs. KVMs? Many regular DPs, sure. I've confused those. It was KVM and David. Thank you, Joey. Hey, well, let's finish up a minute early. I'm not going to drag this out. No, I'm not. If you're just watching, you got in the show late, you missed the beginning, go back to the beginning, get my contact information, especially get the Discord invite. Join the ADRAMADA Discord. It's a tech server, broad-ranging, any kind of tech, and we are just a fun batch of people. I think some of the folks who are on here tonight are going to get together on the Discord server for a Shoot the Breeze thing. I've been doing that with everybody for the last 2 weeks, but tonight I have a very sad and unfortunate commitment that I'm going to leave for seconds after I finish the show, so I won't make it tonight. I will see everybody again on Discord throughout the week and all the other places and platforms. So let us wind this thing up by saying what we always say. I wish you a great rest of the week. Take care of each other, please. Take serious steps to stay healthy, and if at all possible, call or visit your parents. And never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are, of course, you and I. And with that, good night. See you on ADRAMADA next Thursday. Everything is on pace to happen on Thursday. Don't know what the topic's going to be yet, but it'll be something cool, I assure you. And on the other platforms that I'm on. Until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eat up or ah.